Hello and welcome back. I apologize for the dismal background. If you've been watching, you know that we are in the process of moving. So, yeah, the office is pretty much empty at this point. All the collectible toys and comics and autographs and whatever used to be sitting back here is packed up and put away at the moment. So, no display. I apologize. And also, I have no guest with me. Lady Pop Hunter is not here because she doesn't know anything about comic books, and Warren is not here. Flippity, who was supposed to be here because he just can't figure it out. He can't schedule it. So I'm on my own. Sorry. But basically, I wanted to talk about, and this is something that's come up a few times, the problem with modern comic books. What is wrong with modern comics? Now, in all fairness, comic books in the last, say, 5 to 7 years have seen a resurgence in interest, a gradual resurgence in interest from where they have bottomed out, partially due to the films. The film industry has helped out comic books a lot in recent years because they started making decent films again. And it's been a long time since there's been decent comic book movies. Really, for a long time, neither Marvel nor DC could really get it right. They would hit it occasionally, like the original Christopher Reeve Superman or the original Batman with Michael Keaton, and then they blow it. Or they do the Fantastic Four, which they never were able to get right in film. But recently, they've been doing really well with films. So it's rekindled an interest in comic books. Now, I should also point out that a loss of interest, or really the collapse of the market in the between the early to late 90s, is the reason why they have free comic book day. You don't think they just wanted to give you a free comic, did you? The reason they have free comic book day is because people stopped going to comic shops and they stopped buying comic books. And the free comic book day was one, a way to try to draw in new people who have never really gone out for comic books before. And two, to try to win back the people that walked away, like me. So, excuse me. What went wrong? What happened in the 90s that really screwed up comic books? First of all, they were too expensive. The prices skyrocketed pretty much overnight. We went from a period in the early 90s where comic books were still like $75 and a buck a piece. This is the price you were used to, 75 cents to a dollar, roughly a dollar a comic. Then it was $1.25, $1.50, $1.75, $2.50, $3.99. It kept escalating. And this was all in a period of like 2 years, not a gradual increase where like, oh, it's 50 cents for X number of years and now it's 60 or 75. This all happened very quickly where the prices were going up. Part of the reason that the prices were going up is because of variance. And I've talked about this before, and this kind of falls on Todd McFarlane and Marvel Comics a little bit. See, the trading card industry in the late 80s, the trading card industry went through a falling out also. There you went from, and if you get a copy of Tough Stuff or Beckett's collector's guide and you look at it and you look, a real guide be like about this freaking thick, okay? If you pull it up online, that much of it covers like 1908 to 1986, 87, and the rest of it is from then on, because you went from a handful, like 3 or 4 companies making trading cards, to hundreds of companies making trading cards, to the point where modern card companies or the people who do the guides can't even keep up. That doesn't even represent all the cards that have been made. They can't keep up with it, so they select. But the trading card companies, too many of them were making cards. In order to compete, they started making variants. They started making chase cards and exclusives and autographs and holograms. And after a while, that's all anybody wanted. That's all any collector wanted from out of those packs, and the rest of the cards were garbage. They didn't want it anymore. I saw a lot of card and hobby shops close in the late 80s because of this. Now, in the early part of the 90s, when Todd McFarlane was working for Marvel Comics, he got his own series, starting with Spider-Man #1. It was a new series just for him. He was a good artist. He still is. Todd McFarlane's a decent comic book artist. He's one of the better ones. You could put him on a top 10 list of best artists easily. But they gave him his own series. And what did they do with that very first series? It was the first time that comic books had deliberately taken the concept of making multiple different variant covers on purpose. They had the platinum dealer incentive cover. They had the green newsstand, the green comic book edition, the bagged green edition, the silver comic edition, the silver bagged edition, the gold edition, and then the Walmart exclusive gold edition. And that's just off the top of my head. Okay, I don't have this written down anywhere. I don't script. I just talk. Okay, so that was the first time that had been done. And people scrambled. They fell over each other trying to get these books that now aren't even really worth anything. And because that was done, they all started doing it. DC started doing it. Dark Horse started doing it. Image and Valiant Comics were starting to come along when these independent places were pulling talent away from Marvel and DC, kind of like WCW pulled talent away from WWF in the 90s. Also, the comic book industry was doing the same thing. Image was like, yeah, if you come and work for us, you can do whatever you want, instead of having to deal with Marvel or DC, which was your choice between evil and stupid. And I say that because I was actually told that by an artist who worked for Marvel Comics. I'm not going to say who it was. When I used to do the convention circuit, Great Eastern Conventions in Boston years ago, I used to meet a lot of artists and writers. And he was like, yeah, working for Marvel is like your choice between evil and stupid. Marvel is evil and DC is stupid. That's what he said. Don't get mad at me because I said that, because I've mentioned that before when people will write like a paragraph like this in the comment section, giving me crap for saying that. I'm just repeating what he said. I haven't worked for either of them, so I don't know which one is evil and which one is stupid. But anyways, they gave you the option to do whatever the hell you wanted because they were trying to extract that talent, but they really weren't producing very good comics. Image wasn't making good stuff. Neither was Valiant for that matter. And so they came up with the whole variant comic scheme. They perpetuated that even further to draw even more attention. And this created even more of a problem. So now you've got these books that are getting more and more expensive, like the chromium cover Turok Dinosaur Hunter #1. And you're paying, God, what was it, $350 for that? And I remember Comicopia. I don't know if they're still out there. If you're out there, Comicopia, say hi. In Boston, they um, they had a blowout clearance where they had all those modern books, some of them not even a couple of months old, 10 cents a piece just to get rid of them because they couldn't get rid of them. These books weren't selling, but the comic shops were taking a hit buying them to try to keep stuff on the shelves. People got sick of that. So the books were too expensive, too quickly, and there are too many variant covers. And be honest, which ones do you want now? When you go out to the comic shop, there's two kinds of people that are buying them. One, people that are just devoted to a title, and two, people that want that extra special variant that's going to be worth more because there's less of them. The lower the number, the better. That's what they're after. And the regular editions, nobody cares. But that's what the industry has dwindled down to, just like in the card collecting industry. Another problem with modern comics is if you've read comic books long enough, you know that the material isn't that original. It really isn't, be honest. It's a rehash. And they love retelling stories. They love rebooting titles. How many times has the Spider-Man story been retold? How many times has Batman been retold? They just can't let the character run. Or they've got to do other stuff. Basically, they're not really very original, and often the writing is not very good. Or there is no writing. It's completely a graphic novel, and they're relying entirely on the imagery in the comic to tell the story without hardly writing anything. The word blocks are practically empty. They use the art basically to drag the stories out, and sometimes the art isn't very good either. It's not very original. You can't look at it and know who drew it because they're just that good. When you see Jim Lee's art, you know Jim Lee drew it. When you see um, McFarlane, again, I'll go back to that. You know it's McFarlane's artwork. He's just a good artist, and you can sense the difference. But what you get now is these really bland looking panels that all look really cartoonish, primarily because they've been computer generated. These are images that have been drawn on a computer instead of traditional storyboards, and it has that kind of a look. And the artwork, it's not terrible, but it's not dynamic either. It doesn't jump out at you. You don't look at it and just say, wow, that is fantastic, or that is really unique. I mean, Frank Miller's not the best comic book artist, but when you see Frank Miller's drawing, when you see his artwork, you know it's Frank Miller, don't you? It's unique enough and good enough that you instantly know, wow, Frank Miller drew that. You don't get that sense from a lot of modern comics anymore. It's just not there. Another problem is the politics. A lot of comic books, just like everything else, cartoons and TV shows and everything has politics injected into it now. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm sick of seeing it. I'm sick of seeing it. It killed Archie's comics for me. Archie comics is trash now, as far as I'm concerned. They've been around for decades. They've been around since the time of World War II, since the Golden Age. They've been doing Archie comics. I don't remember the specific date off the top of my head, but they've hung in for a long time doing exactly the same thing. And then after the creator dies, what happens? They kill the legacy by making it political. They have um, Archie dying, getting shot to death in a comic, trying to protect his gay friend from being shot. And I'm like, what the hell? That's purely political writing, trying to draw interest to the book to sell titles, but a complete bastardization of the original intention of the comic book. And you see that a lot with classics. Like, you've seen that happen to Dr. Seuss's creations, you've seen that happen to Jim Henson's creations. Well, you've seen it happen to the Archie as well, and a lot of other comic books too. It's just way too political, and people aren't interested in seeing that. I mean, these are a lot of the primary reasons why I and a lot of other people like me just bailed in the mid to late 90s. Who just sat there and looked at the whole industry and said, I don't want to be bothered with modern comic books anymore. I'm just going to go on collecting vintage stuff, older items with an established value, items that are interesting or different, because what's being done now is not original. It's been done over and over and over again. Take a look at this. One of the big deals right now is the alternate reality stuff. You're seeing this from Marvel and DC nonstop. Alternate reality versions of characters and situations. This has been done. As a matter of fact, it got so out of hand that DC created the Crisis on Infinite Earths to clean it up. The Anti-Monitor, if you look up the Anti-Monitor character, the reason DC created this is because they had so much alternate reality crap spread out all over the place. They wanted to dispose of it all in a storyline that made sense. So they create the Anti-Monitor, the Devourer of Universes, so that they can erase all of those alternate realities that they created and start over again. Now they're right back to that again. Both Marvel and DC are doing this all the time, making alternate reality versions of all their characters and situations. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's so great. Well, you're going to get tired of it after a while. It's going to spread too thin, just like it did back then. At least with Marvel Comics, they kept it contained in their What If series. DC just ran all over the place with it and just had to fix it. They had to gather all this mess together, all of their characters that didn't jive or that were thought of or conceived as alternate reality, and erase it and start from fresh, start all over again. I mean, that's basically some ideas as to why comic books took a bath. I mean, during the 90s, they lost a lot of money. They lost a lot of money. And recently, like I said, in the last 5 to 7 years, there's been a resurgence of interest in comic books, but that's primarily due to the films. As long as the films hold out, they'll continue to be able to sell books at that level, but it could bottom out again in the future. People could start backing off again as they see flaws in the whole system, problems with it. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I threw a lot out there. It's a lot to absorb off the top of my head, and I'm sure there's more. Do you have some reasons why you no longer collect comics or you backed off? Or some reasons why you think that I'm wrong? That's fine. Go ahead and put it in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think. I do try to respond to as many of these as I can, as many as the comments as I can. Did you get anything out of the video? A thumbs up would be appreciated, as well as a subscription. If you are not a subscriber, please do go ahead and subscribe and hit the notifications button so that you know when new content comes out, because YouTube doesn't care if you know. And I will see you again soon. Hopefully the move will not interrupt our schedule of posting videos, and we'll see how that works out. So I'll see you again soon.